Soon after the rails were laid across Marshall Pass, Colorado, where they go over 12,000 feet above the sea, the route quickly earned a reputation for being challenging to climb and descend. One night, shortly after the treacherous pass was opened, an old engineer named Nelson Edwards was assigned to a passenger train. He had traveled the route with passengers behind him for several months and had no accidents on his record. As he left the yard office and went to the roundhouse, Edwards couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at him. The Colorado Valley, usually filled with the natural symphony of rustling trees and distant animal calls, was cloaked in an unnatural silence. The air was colder, frostier than it should have been. The night sky loomed darker than usual, the stars obstructed by thick, swirling clouds that promised an early snow. That morning, a defective rail and a report of an unsafe bridge had come in. Despite the maintenance crew's best efforts, Edwards felt a lingering doubt as he prepared his train for the journey. By late evening, he was picking up passengers under the pale, ghostly light of the moon. 2 short whistle blasts later, the Iron Beast began its long journey. The engine puffed and wheezed. Its rhythmic chugging was the only sound that broke the oppressive silence. The old girl still had the strength to take the train from the bottom of the valley and climb up to get everyone home from the biting cold. Stopping at several stations along the way, the engineer and fireman peered around the scenery but constantly felt as if something was wrong that night. About halfway into their journey, Edwards heard a whistle echoing around the ice and rocks as he left the first line of snow sheds. At the same time, the bell in his cab sounded, and he applied the brakes, stopping the train. The disgruntled conductor went up to old number 5, wondering why the train had stopped without his permission. But the conductor never gave a signal to stop. It was frustrating and confusing, but they had a train that needed to keep to time. 2 short blasts later, Edwards opened the throttle, sanded the track, and the heavy train got underway again, climbing higher into the mountain's cold embrace. Hours passed, and the train was nearing the end of its journey. The town of Gunnison was only a few miles away. The engine's guttural chugging echoed throughout the valley. Edwards, though still on edge, began to relax. But then, as the train rounded a sharp curve to cross the final trestle bridge, his eyes widened in terror. A swinging red lantern cut through the misty night just beyond the bend. Without thinking, Edwards slammed on the brakes again, the train screeching to a halt just feet beyond the newly constructed trestle bridge. Just after the train stopped, the engineer and fireman heard warning whistles from an engine. Confused, the engineer looked behind his locomotive's tender, but nothing was there. The ground then started to rumble as the conductor did a double take. Edwards staggered out of the cab, his breath catching in his throat. The passengers were shaking in their coats. There were no wreckage marks, no debris, nothing. The bridge was still there, but everyone could have sworn that they saw a train fall off the bridge. The train had seemingly disappeared after falling off the bridge. The valley was as still and as silent as it had been before. The only sound was the low moan of the wind winding through the trees and the locomotive idling with steam hissing out of every corner. The red lantern that had stopped the train had disappeared. No cry of hurt men or hiss of steam came up. No sign of it remained. Nothing made sense. Shaken but determined, Edwards and his crew pressed on, arriving in Gunnison right on time. But no one spoke of the phantom train they had witnessed that night. The next day, search crews scoured the canyon where the ghost train had appeared. There were no signs of an accident, no reports of a missing train, nothing but the howl of the wind as it rolled through the valley. But Nelson Edwards never set foot on that route again. He resigned the following day and found work far from the mountains, far from the haunting whistle of the ghost train. He never spoke of what he had seen. But those who lived near Marshall Pass began to whisper about strange occurrences on the rails. Every October, as the wind howled throughout the valley, they would hear it, the distant whistle of a train that wasn't there. A howling whistle every night in October will echo and haunt the valley, but no engineer has encountered the ghost train since Edwards saw it that night. And though no other engineer ever claimed to have seen the ghost train, the legend lives on. Some said it was a warning, a reminder of the dangers lurking on the mountain's jagged cliffs. Others believed it was the spirit of a wrecked train doomed to ride the rails forever, searching for the wreckage it could never find. But whatever the truth of the matter is, it will die like the phantom train did that night, alone.